Think for yourself. Question authority.
What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Now today we got some very interesting information to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 and its specs and power output that quite possibly may have been leaked by Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick during a live testimony at court between Microsoft and the FTC. So this is not a rumor, this is basically leaked information that was shared publicly to prove certain points about their plans with the future of Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft with Activision Blizzard. So if you are excited about Switch 2 information and the possible specs range of this console, hit the like button. And I do think there is something to be excited about, by the way, and we'll talk about that later on in the video. But let's go over this information first to get an understanding of what actually happened here, because sadly, a lot of these so-called Nintendo news websites fail to report this information correctly, in fact misleading a lot of people by the actual statement that was made by Bobby Kotick about the Nintendo Switch 2 and its possible power range in terms of comparisons to other consoles. So let's take a look at what happened here. So first of all, I'm getting this information from wccftech.com and the links will be in the description. However, the first information that was leaked was an email conversation between Bobby Kotick and Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa. And they talked about the potential of the next-gen Switch. A lot of times what will happen is that these companies, of course, will talk about plans for the future and the desire to have their future games to be on their next platform. Since we know Call of Duty is the biggest selling franchise in the world, and it's a yearly installment which has missed Nintendo platforms for the past 10 years. So having Call of Duty come back to Nintendo would be a huge moneymaker potentially for Nintendo, and Shintaro Furukawa obviously wants to have that game on their platform, their next-gen platform, since they're not going to be bringing it to the current Switch. So during this testimony by Bobby Kotick, this email was shared, and in the email, Bobby Kotick said that the next-gen Switch will have a closer alignment to Gen 8 platforms and our offerings regarding Activision Blizzard on PS4 and Xbox One. It's reasonable to assume we can make something compelling for the next-gen Switch as well. Now keep in mind that he did not say that the Switch 2 would have performance that was the same as PS4 and Xbox One. He said it was in closer alignment to Gen 8 platforms, which includes the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X in those platforms. So this statement confirmed that Bobby Kotick has an idea of the spec range of where this next-gen Switch will lie. However, there's a lot more to it than just this, and this is where the failing of these Nintendo websites and other websites that reported it today earlier comes into play, because they did not report the other information that came along with this. They also had live testimony by Kotick actually saying, and I quote, "We will likely make a Call of Duty game for a new Nintendo console. I can't tell you there are specific plans, but I can tell you it's something we consider. We would consider it once we had the specs, but we don't have them at present." Now remember, he's giving testimony at court here. And then he goes on to say, "We missed out on the opportunity for this past generation of Switch, but we'd have to wait until the specifications. We don't have any present plans to do so." So from this follow-up statement, what he's basically saying here is that they don't have the firm specs just yet. However, from the previous email, it sounds like he had an idea of where the range would be, more in line with 8th generation platforms, PS4, Xbox One, PS4 Pro, Xbox One X. However, since he's likely under many different NDAs regarding any undisclosed information about Nintendo's next-gen console, it's very unlikely he's going to give specifics that possibly Activision Blizzard already has dev kits for this next-gen Switch. And you may ask, well, why would they have dev kits if they can't talk about specs yet? Well, likely because a lot of times the early dev kits don't have their specs finalized, which means that he could be telling the truth and also stretching the truth as well because of hiding that information. Nintendo has not finalized their specs yet, hasn't finalized clock speeds, but they still are able to hand out early dev hardware to these developers to prepare ports for their next-gen console. It's happened all throughout the history of gaming, and this is likely no different. So while it's true the specs likely have not been locked down yet, he still can have a very good idea of where this console lies in with its actual processing power. So knowing all this information, let us assume for the moment that this is correct and the next gen Switch will be in the 8th gen of platforms power range in terms of teraflops, right? So we know the PS4 was 1.8 teraflops, Xbox One was about 1.3 teraflops, and then the PS4 Pro was 4 teraflops, and Xbox One X was very heavily touted as being 6 teraflops, right? Which didn't really mean all that much in the end. And I saw various opinions about this online, people being disappointed that this was true, that Nintendo wouldn't be able to get new ports from PS5 and Xbox Series S and X. However, I don't think that's true at all, and I discussed this at length in the live stream I did back in March, and it just so happens that it's even more relevant now than it was then, because it looks like this information may be true since it's being testified in court. So let's take a look at what I talked about regarding if a Nintendo Switch 2 was having a lower spec output than some have expected, and it gives you a little sneak peek at what you're missing if you can't attend those live streams. But hey, they are on the channel, so do check them out in the live stream tab. But take a look at this, and then we can discuss in the comment section, and then I'll come back at the end to wrap it up. I think they need to hit a baseline about 1.5 teraflops in portable mode, so they can upclock while it's docked to higher resolutions, maybe three teraflops or so, or maybe even higher than that. I think the baseline needs to be about that 1.5 teraflops or its specs in order for them to get some games to be running on this next gen Switch, or basically all the games. They want them to run good enough. Now, there's some interesting things though going on with Nintendo's own patents and with the technology and advancements with DLSS 3 and FSR 3. Now, Nintendo is already using FSR on Nintendo Switch games. So I don't think, it doesn't look like, as far as right now is concerned, that Nintendo will be using DLSS for their next gen Switch. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually probably a smart thing for them to do. And the reason why I say that is because, let me show you this here. It's because of this patent they're working on was updated back just in January, actually. Patent, basically they were using, this is like a form of Nintendo's own DLSS. But it's not DLSS. It's their own customized variant of upscaling technology using neural networks. Okay, so that's basically how DLSS works. But the issue is that Nintendo may not want to be paying Nvidia extra money to be using DLSS technology, right? Or they may not even want to use, may not even want to be using it at all and just use their own thing. So like basically the process of having the image like this, you see games that look low resolution, jaggy, poor image quality, like basically like a lot of Switch games, right? But you want them to look better, but with any tricks possible that you can implement. And here is the tricks. This is what happens when you AI upscale an image that is at lower resolution. You get a better looking, smoother looking output on higher resolution displays. So this is really, really awesome because Nintendo is actually working on this themselves. And if they have this right here, they can target lower resolutions, especially in portable mode. For a next gen Switch, and I realize 1.5 teraflops seems really, really low, but you have to take into account that they'll be working with the latest, a lot newer technology than the 400 gigaflop Nintendo Switch from 2015. So like even 400 gigaflops in 2023 would be way better performing than 400 gigaflops in old ancient processors from 2015. So it's not necessarily about the teraflops. Yes, it is, but it also isn't as well, because they have to hit a certain degree, but they have to also have newer processes to run things better. Newer APIs will also do it as well. So this is the way of the future, though, guys. This This technology is what's going to really help Nintendo create experiences that look a lot better on your TV screen. But it's not just AI upscaling that will help them. And like I said, this is not DLSS. This is different, and it's much better. It's much better for Nintendo to use their own technique than using NVIDIA's, because it's going to save them a lot of money in license fees. Okay, so it's not just this though. Since FSR 2 and FSR 3 are going to be open source for developers to use, Nintendo, it makes logical sense for them to not only use this, because this patent doesn't talk about frame generation. It talks about mainly the upscaling technique. So here's an interesting thought, guys. Check this out. So with AMD just announced that they are working on FSR 3.0. Okay. Now, the cool thing about FSR 3.0 is that it's also going to be doing frame generation. So they can actually be doubling the frame rates from 30 frames to 60 frames. For Nintendo to use something like this, this is not something that will cost them basically anything to use, because AMD is making it available to all developers, whether you're using NVIDIA or if you're using AMD or other chips. Basically, AMD is making this available to everybody in 2023. And what year are we in now? 2023. So, say for example, we're just spitballing here, but this would make a lot of sense because Nintendo's already using FSR on Switch games. If Nintendo adopts FSR 3.0 along with their own AI upscaling techniques for the actual upscaling of the graphics themselves, what they could theoretically do is target 720p and 30 frames per second for next-gen Switch games on the go, but with some kind of like an OS operated blanket FSR 3, kind of like how Steam Deck does it, right? Steam Deck does FSR by the OS level, and if they implement that for their dev kits, you could have developers targeting 720p 30 frames per second, but the actual frame generation of FSR 3 would make it 60 frames per second on your display. And you would have an image that looks like it's upscaling to like 900p, 1000p, and 60 frames on your portable display. But in actuality, they're targeting 720p and 30 frames per second. You see? That is the trick or enhancement that these techniques bring. It's really exciting when you think about it. I'm not saying they're going to do that 100% for sure, but that's basically where we're heading. Developers are already using this in DLSS 3.0 for PC games. Now, so even though AMD's behind by like a year, this stuff is really cool because it can really help a lower spec console get a lot more results from a lot less of actual processing power. Okay, this is very much Nintendo like, right? That's how they could have 1.5 teraflops basically being the target for portable mode, and then up to like 3 teraflops, 3.5 teraflops while docked could be their target while it's on your TV, and they can actually get more performance that way while targeting a lower baseline in portable mode. All right, guys, so there you have it. We discussed that at length back in March. I do think that is exactly what Nintendo would need to do to get the ports that they need for next-gen Switch, and to have games looking good enough and run good enough to have them be acceptable to purchase, in terms of parity's sake, to have them not look completely different on Nintendo's next-gen console. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section, your thoughts on the specs for the Nintendo Switch 2. Do you think that's going to be an issue here, or do you think that what we talked about in this video will actually make more sense once Nintendo shows the console off? We will see for ourselves exactly how well these games can run at a possible lower spec range due to these various different techniques of today, the newer technology and software that they have to make games look a lot better running at lower resolutions. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. If you did enjoy this, please hit the like button, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.